All glories to So, Srimad Bhagavatam, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Savai Umsam Parodhano Yato Bhakti Adhoksade Aitaki Pratihata Yaya Atma Suprasidati Savai Umsam Parodhano Yato Bhakti Adhoksade Aitukya Pratihata Yatma Suprasidati Savai Pungsam Parodharmo Yato Bhakti Adhoksade Aitukya Pratihata Yatma Suprasidati So take it away. So the ladies. So, Prabhupada's translation, the supreme occupation, Dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Purport. In this statement, Sri H.D.Goswami answers the first question of the sages of Naimisharanya. The sages asked him to summarize the whole range of revealed scriptures and present the most essential part so that fallen people, or the people in general, might easily take it up. The Vedas prescribe two different types of occupation for the human being. One is called the pravritti marg, or path of sense enjoyment, and the other is called the nivritti marg, or path of renunciation. The path of enjoyment is inferior, and the path of sacrifice for the supreme cause is superior. The material existence of the living being is a diseased condition of actual life. Actual life is spiritual existence, or Brahma Bhuta existence, where life is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. Material existence is temporary, illusory, and full of miseries. There is no happiness at all. There is just the futile attempt to get rid of the miseries, and temporary cessation of misery is falsely called happiness. Therefore, the path of progressive material enjoyment, which is temporary, miserable, and illusory, is inferior. But devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which leads one to eternal, blissful, and all-cognizant life, is called the superior quality of occupation. This is sometimes polluted when mixed with the inferior quality. For example, adoption of devotional service for material gain is certainly an obstruction to the progressive path of renunciation. Renunciation or abnegation for ultimate good is certainly a better occupation than enjoyment in the diseased condition of life. Such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration. Therefore, devotional service to the Lord must be pure in quality, that is, without the least desire for material enjoyment. One should therefore accept the superior quality of occupation in the form of devotional service of the Lord without any tinge of unnecessary desire, fruitive action, and philosophical speculation. This alone can lead one to perpetual solace in his service. We have purposely denoted dharma as occupation because the root meaning of the word dharma is that which sustains one's existence. A living being's sustenance of existence is to coordinate his activities with his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Krishna is the central pivot of living beings, and he is the all-attractive living entity or eternal form amongst all other living beings or eternal forms. Each and every living being has his eternal form in the spiritual existence, and Krishna is the eternal attraction for all of them. Krishna is the complete whole, and everything else is his part and parcel. The relation is one of the servant and the served. It is transcendental, completely distinct from our experience in material existence. This relation of servant and the served is the most congenial form of intimacy. One can realize it as devotional service. Progresses. Everyone should engage himself in that transcendental loving service to the Lord, even in the present conditional state of material existence, that will gradually give one the clue to actual life and please him to complete satisfaction. Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Viransamriti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshuru Milidam Jaina Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So, Savai Pungsang Paradharno Yado Bhakti Radhoksije Ahaitukya Pratyata Yatma Suprasidati. This famous verse, speaking of parodharma, or the highest dharma. As Prabhupada explains, dharma comes from the root dhar, which means to hold or sustain, as in, for example, from the same root, Krishna is called Giridhari, because he held up the Giri, the mountain. Or Krishna is called Gadadhara, because he holds a club. Or Chakradhara, because he holds a chakra, obviously. So that's the word dhara. And dharma, this word means an essential characteristic or quality which holds or sustains something's identity. Prabhupada said if something is not liquid, it's not water. So liquidity or transparency, these are the dharmas of water, and these qualities uphold or sustain the identity of water. If it's not liquid, it ain't water. And so, for example, there's a poetic expression found in the Mahabharata to say that someone died, and that is Kala Dharma Motyagata, that Kala Dharma, the Dharma of time, literally overcame the person, overtook the person. So the Dharma of Kala, time, the essential characteristic, Krishna gives in the Gita, of course, Kalos mi loka kshayakrit, time I am, destroyer of the world. Time is also called, death is called Antakara, the end maker, the one who brings everything to its end. So that's the final score. Mahatattva 5, Liviente 0. In the sense that, because as we know, everything goes through different stages, but what really counts, at the end of the game, there's no time left on the scoreboard clock, and the score is, that's what counts, right? It's like in a football game, there are 4 quarters, so one team may be winning, but at the end, heartbreaker, they lost. So that's what goes down in the record book. They lost the game. That's the final. So the final score of everything is death. That's the final score. Therefore, Krishna says, Kalos mi loka kshayakrit. So, Dharma. And for example, Bhishma. If you look at the Bhagavatam for this same first canto, when Bhishma is on the bed of arrows, don't try that at home. Lying on a bed of arrows. But Bhima is on the bed of arrows, and it said he spoke on Dana Dharma, the Dharma of charity or giving. Dana, from which we have the English word donation, obviously. Dana Dharma, Stri Dharma, the duties of women, Raja Dharma, royal duties, the duties of political leaders, and so on. So there's so many dharmas, and here Krishna, the Bhagavatam says that there is indeed, Savai, there is indeed Pungsang Paro Dharma, a highest Dharma, sometimes called Sanatana Dharma. Obviously, we have different dharmas based on the kind of body we have. So if someone has a male body, Stri Dharma would probably not be appropriate. Woman's Dharma. Or if someone, let's say, is not a ruler, then Raja Dharma wouldn't apply. So we have different kinds of Dharma based on our body. But there is a Dharma which comes directly from the soul. It is the soul's duty. And it doesn't matter what kind of body you have. It doesn't matter what kind of body you have. It's very interesting because if you look at the history of Vedic culture, its ups and downs, religions go through boom-bust cycles, just like economies. And you have this cultural tension because on the one hand, you find in Bharatvarsha probably the most clear, the most powerful affirmation of the ultimate oneness of all living beings. Oneness with variety, of course, of individuality. Krishna talks all the time about this equality, this oneness. And yet, we have what is one of the most oppressive social hierarchies in history. And so it's interesting how inevitably we have these two principles, because we are spirit souls, and as souls we are all equal, we are all one, and as bodies we're all different. And the bodies have to be organized socially, and there are natural hierarchies. For example, parents take care of their children, teach their children. That's a natural hierarchy. In the state, there has to be a leader, and so on, or a government system. But at the same time, there's another factor which enters here that Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verses 20 through 22, where he talks about jnana, knowledge, and the three modes of nature. And here, Krishna is using the word jnana in the sense of worldview, like how you see the world. There are two ways of understanding, actually. In Sanskrit, they're called samasa and vyasa. Samasa means putting it all together. Samasa. And then vyasa means taking it apart. So there's the synthetic method. Synthetic not in the sense of like plastic socks, but synthetic in the sense like sin. Sin in English, like synthesis, comes from Sanskrit sun, together, like sankirtan. So you see the big picture, you put it all together, and Krishna describes that as jnana in the 18th chapter of the Gita. And then there's the analytic procedure where you sort of break everything apart and break everything into its little component parts and see what makes it tick. And this is different than that. And this is like you see in Sankhya philosophy, in the third canto of the Bhagavatam, where you list all the fundamental elements, which are called tattvas. So buddhi in the Gita refers to that analytic process where you separate things into their component parts, understand how it works. And jnana, in this case, Krishna is using to mean the big picture. What is your big picture? What do you think it all means? And so what's interesting is that in the mode of passion, which Krishna calls rajasa jnanam, sort of worldview, big picture, knowledge in the mode of passion, one sees the obvious differences. There are men, there are women, there's different species, races, there's all these differences. And in the mode of passion, because one is still very much influenced by the bodily concept of life, therefore in the mode of passion, one sees the differences as fundamental. In other words, men and women, can we help you there? In other words, men and women are really different. Ultimately, they're just different. And people of different religions are just different. People of different races, people of different political persuasions, and so on. Whereas in the mode of goodness, Krishna says, one sees the differences. Obviously, there is such a thing as male and female, different species, races, philosophies, and so on. But one sees behind the differences the ultimate oneness of all living beings. There's one spiritual state, one spiritual existence in which all beings partake, in which they all share. And so it's interesting that at those periods of society, whether it's a religious society or a political or social whatever thing, when people tend more toward the mode of passion, then the differences become very important. They emphasize how people are different from each other, men and women, people of different philosophies, people of different religions. And when there's more of the mode of goodness, what strikes one is the oneness. So, in the mode of passion, the oneness is just like an official doctrine. It's just sort of an official idea, but it's not the way the world really works. In the real world, people are... some people think they're actually better than other people. Some people think certain genders are better. Well, actually, there's only two. Or one may think that, a man is better than a woman. And so these are all symptoms of the material mode of passion. And as we see, as Vedic culture played out in South Asia, there are times when people take the oneness seriously, and there are many historical periods where they don't, and hierarchy becomes oppressive and suffocating. And so I think anyone in any society, religious or otherwise, it would be very naive to think that we don't face those same challenges and dangers. To think, there's no danger that any one of us would ever be influenced by the mode of passion. Really. And as we know, anyway, I could say more, but I'm not in trouble yet in this class. So, Savai Pungsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhakti. So the highest dharma is that which produces bhakti unto Krishna, Adoksaji. That bhakti is supposed to be, or should be, a haituki. The word haituki is an important word in our philosophy. A hetu means a cause, and hetu is often used to mean a psychological cause, which in English we would call a motive. a motive. A motive is, after all, a psychological cause. And so to say that something has a motive, or in other words, say something is motivated, from the word hetu they say haituka. And to say that something is not motivated, in the sense of like a selfish motive, then you'd say ahaituka. And here, because bhakti is a feminine word, you have the feminine form of the adjective, ahaituki. So now you know where that word comes from. Tell your friends, spread the word. So Krishna says that the highest dharma is that dharma which produces bhakti to Krishna, to the Lord, which is ahaituki, unmotivated. And apratihata, hata means struck or broken, and prati means sort of like counter, so literally it's something like counter-struck, in other words, like a counter-strike, which is taken to mean here interrupted or broken. So the idea here is that one's devotion to Krishna should be unbreakable, inquebrantable, they would say in Spanish. That one's service to Krishna, one's devotion, cannot be broken. That is real bhakti. Because life is full of weird events. And life is full of all kinds of troubles. It's kind of designed that way. The Mahatattva is booby-trapped. Because the idea being that the ultimate purpose of the creation is to try to wake us up and make us realize that you took a wrong turn at the Vaitani River. Back up. It's like the divine GPS is saying, back up and turn around as soon as possible. It's just like when you're on the highway and you're going off out of your lane. There's little bumps in the road, and your car starts vibrating, and you wake up. Actually, 80 miles an hour, and you wake up. So, actually, that's what our troubles are. That's what our anxiety is. It's just little speed bumps, the little grooves on the shoulder of the road that make your body and mind vibrate. So it's interesting that I saw this interview with this sort of champion fighter, and so the interviewer said, "Well, what about pain? When you feel pain in the fight?" And the person said, "Well, it's just information." It's just information. It's how you use the information. So it's a fact. Our suffering is information. It's like the doctor touches you. Do you feel anything? Ow! And then you scream in pain as the doctor touches one spot. So that's the point. Krishna is a doctor. He's kind of like probing, and does this hurt? Does this hurt? And so Krishna subjects us to different experiences. And so when we're in anxiety, when we're suffering, when our little lotus hearts are broken, then it's actually Krishna alerting us. What's that nice line from George Harrison's song, "While my sitar gently weeps"? It's, for every mistake we must surely be learning. So, ahaituki pratita yayatma suprasidati. So in that devotion, which is ahaituki, it can't be broken. The idea is that, what is that verse that Narada speaks to Vyasa? That jahatina, that smaran mukundam rupa guhanam punar, that once someone has actually understood Krishna, or relished the spiritual pleasure of serving Krishna, once someone has really understood it, you cannot give up Krishna. It's something that, because we have an eternal bond with Krishna, and once a person really understands that, you can't give it up. So apratihata, that real devotion cannot be broken, and there's no material motivation. And such devotion, the Bhagavatam says, yatma suprasidati. Prasidati is a verb. Su means it really prasidati, and like very much. And prasidati is the verb corresponding to the word prasada. So we all know what prasada is. So prasada means mercy or grace. And so prasidati means something like to be blessed. to be blessed, or to enter a state of grace, or simply to be happy, but to be happy in a serious, sublime, spiritual way. So the soul can become very blessed, very happy. Prabhupada says you're completely satisfied by that bhakti. Prabhupada used to say that we can measure our progress. In devotional service, we can actually see how well we're doing. Because we're doing well, we should be very happy. Anyway, it reminded me of a scene from a Monty Python movie. So, the idea is that that is a symptom. Prabhupada once said, if you're not happy in Krishna consciousness, you're doing something wrong. Because the soul is by nature happy. Any questions so far on these points? Yes?
Talk about happiness. In the 7th chapter, Bhagavad Gita talks about austerities of the mind. One of those is satisfaction. So is happiness an austerity?
Okay. How is satisfaction and austerity of the mind? Because in this world we tend to be, what's the word? A little bratty sometimes. In the material world, we have desires, and our desires are often not satisfied. We become disappointed, angry, offended, this and that. And so, despite the fact that the world is disturbing you in different ways, despite that, you can just find satisfaction. It's an austerity. So here, the word santushti, santosha, satisfaction doesn't mean, it's not the same as prasada. It means, you could say it's related to it, it's not the same word. So to keep yourself satisfied, even though there's so many disturbing things going on, as we know, that it's just in your own mind. I mean, there's some people, just leave them alone, or just everyone's nice to them, and they're just in a bad mood, it's like some people, I always give this example when I used to live or spend a lot of time on our Brazil farm, Nova Vocula. And in the summer, you can find probably a large percentage of the 8,400,000 species who are insects. And there's this one beetle that has a short lifespan, and it comes around, flies around at night, and when you wake up in the morning, you see all these beetles. Where I was living in the patio of the house, all these beetles are on their back, wiggling their legs, and and so when I first saw this, I would take the little beetles and put them back on their legs. They would take 2 or 3 steps and flip over again. And I realized that's just what they do. They flip over on their backs. And so some people are like that. You can put them anywhere in the world, and within 72 hours, they will be offended, hurt, confused. I thought that it wouldn't be like this. Some people want help, some people want attention. People that want attention there are people that want attention but not really help. And they're sort of like black holes sucking in energy, and they don't give off any light. So the point is that to some people their sweet spot, their comfort zone is victimhood. Or some people relish their suffering. Actually, Jane Austen jokes about this a lot. And Krishna talks about it. If you think about it, Harsha Shoka, lamenting and sort of being jubilant or getting excited, they're obviously two sides of the same coin, because whether you are lamenting or whether you are celebrating your fortune or feeling great about yourself, in both cases, one is very self-centered. So lamenting is just another way of being obsessed with yourself. And if the first way doesn't work, thinking I'm the greatest, and if somehow life is beating you down, and it's hard to really believe that I'm the greatest because people don't respect me or understand me, blah, 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 then plan B. Be totally self-centered by lamenting. And think about yourself all day, and woe is me, and all that. And so they're just different strategies for wallowing in self-attention. And these are the dualities. These are the dualities of life. Krishna talks a lot about the dualities. In fact, he says, Dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mam dridha vrata. In order to really follow our vows, in order to actually keep our commitment to Krishna, and we have to be free of these dualities. Dvandva moha nirmukta. Krishna speaks of dvandva moha, the illusion of duality, victory and defeat, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, and so on. And so to become really indifferent to it, that's also called samatvam, equality, being equal to all these things. And so when every moment something's happening that we like, we want to possess or grab onto, something's happening we don't like, want to get rid of, or just kick in the teeth. And so in the midst of all that, to just be satisfied, because here satisfaction means you're not getting excited, even in the positive sense, because it's like if you're satisfied with your meal and someone says, would you like some more? No, thank you, I'm satisfied. So here, satisfaction is in the sense of, I don't want any more. And so a person who gets all excited in sort of like the sense of like an excited electron, sometimes we use the word excited in a positive sense, like I'm really excited about that. But here, excited means harsha, just like a little out of control electron. That's just, and so it's getting harsha, or that excitement, is not satisfaction, because it's really based on wanting more, or having expectations, or wanting to going for the killing, or finally grab a hold of what you were looking for. And so there's something about this excitement which is not satisfaction. So the satisfaction here is in the sense of self-satisfaction, like I'm happy with what I have. And so if something good happens, that's nice, but it's just some resource to use for Krishna. Or something bad happens, one realizes, well, whatever, yet means whatever. So the idea here is that satisfaction is not based on some material situation, like if people like me, I'm satisfied, if people don't like me, I'm not satisfied. Because this satisfaction is just something that comes from within, based on your relationship with Krishna. Therefore Krishna says, Yo antararama, what is antarsatusha? That one who's satisfied within, one who's enjoying within. And so if you really find this inner satisfaction, this inner happiness, then whatever's going on, out there in the Looney Tunes of the material world, it doesn't really affect us. Because that's not where our satisfaction is coming from. It's like if you did not invest in a certain stock and that stock goes down, it's like, I didn't invest in that stock, so it doesn't really affect me. So when we become emotionally invested in the material world, like I'm happy because of some material arrangement, like people like me, or I have some money or something, then when I lose those things, obviously, since my happiness was resting on that, someone literally just pulled the rug out from under me. When I lose that object which was supporting my happiness, then my happiness collapses. But if my happiness is built, this sounds Christian, if it's built on a rock. But if our happiness is built on Krishna's actually reliable. He's emotionally stable and reliable. So if our happiness is built on Krishna, then we're always happy. We're always happy. So be very careful about building your happiness on the shifting sands of material things. Because sooner or later we have to lose it. So, it's just common sense. It's just psychology 1A. This is not some mystic religious philosophy. It's just basically not being a moron. And just looking at how the real world is. So this is basic understanding. The Buddhists know this, other religions know this. So that's what Krishna means by santushti, by satisfaction. And it's austerity because the mind wants to attach itself to things, or the mind wants to hate certain things. As we know, there are people that love to hate. So to resist that and not allow himself to become attached or adverse to something, but just be satisfied in Krishna. That's the austerity of the mind. Yes, Your Grace. Do we allow women to ask questions?
So how could one distinguish of, let's say they find they're not happy, for instance. So how can they distinguish between whether it's an internal change of attitude they need to make, or if Krishna is pushing them in a particular direction and they might be like resisting, or Krishna's trying to make some change, wants them to make an external change? How do you distinguish between when your change needs to be internal or external?
Well, they're related.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. See if I got this right.
Well, you can summarize it nicely.
There are times when we may feel dissatisfied because Krishna is pushing us in a certain direction. And so one of the ways, in many ways, Krishna shows us that we need to do something else, is that we become dissatisfied with what we're doing. So how do we know it's actually Krishna pushing us and not simply our material mind? Is that what you meant?
Yes, thank you.
First of all, let me begin with a term that Krishna uses often in the Gita, buddhi yoga, that we are actually practicing spiritual intelligence. We're actually supposed to think. And so, buddhi yoga, for example, Krishna says in 10:10, Tesham satata yutanam, for those who are always engaged in me. Tesham satata yutanam bhajatam priti purvakam, worshiping me with love. Dadami buddhi yogam tam jena mam bhajante. I give them buddhi yoga. It's very interesting. Krishna there doesn't say I give them devotion, he says I give them buddhi yoga, by which they come to me. So Krishna says at 10:10 that we come to him by being intelligent. Of course, obviously there has to be devotion, bhakti amam, abhijanat, and so on. So obviously one has to have devotion. But it's just like in that interesting statement in the Bhagavatam about Lord Chaitanya's coming, that yagyaya sankirtana prayar yajanti sumedasa, that those who have good intelligence worship the Lord through sankirtan. So the basic attitude of a devotee, when a devotee is acting like a devotee, the basic attitude of a devotee is wanting to please Krishna. Wanting to do and Krishna is not just some whimsical god like, you brought me vanilla, but I'm in a pistachio nut mood. Therefore, take 5 lives as a buffalo in Yellowstone National Park. So it's not, it's like this interest. Krishna is not whimsical. There's an interesting question posed by Socrates to Euthyphro, Bhakta Socrates. He was speaking to this self-righteous idiot named Euthyphro. And so in the course of their discussion, Socrates said to him, are certain actions good, like morally good, because the gods love them? Or do the gods love those actions because they are good? In other words, there's kind of like the whimsical concept of God, which I find extremely unattractive. That Krishna wants certain things for no good reason. He's just, it's like might makes right. He's God. He's much more powerful than you. He can wipe you out in a second, so you better do what he wants. So why is Krishna doing that? Because he's God, you jerk. I personally don't find that really attractive. Because to me it just sounds like a religious version of the law of the jungle. I find that what makes Krishna really attractive is that he's actually so attractive. Bullies aren't attractive, except to certain people with very unfortunate psychologies. So, So that was the question Socrates raised. Does Krishna want us to do something just because that's his whim? Or does he have some higher purpose? Is it that the action itself is good and good for us? Krishna, we should avoid a philosophical mistake. To say that Krishna is beyond mundane morality does not mean to say that Krishna is beyond morality. Because morality here is not a law that Krishna has to follow. It's not that there are laws that Krishna has to follow. He's God. However, what the Bhagavatam emphasizes over and over again is that Krishna is by nature supremely virtuous. Krishna is by nature supremely virtuous. And therefore, to be moral doesn't mean, in this sense, to be subjected to laws, because Krishna is not subjected to laws, but it means simply to be good. To be good and to do things because they are good. They're good for others or for oneself. And so, Krishna morality is the very essence of Krishna in the sense that he is supreme goodness. And he's the source of all goodness. So therefore, Krishna, whatever Krishna asks us to do, he asks us to do because it's actually good for us. After all, even a good human being would never order someone to do anything unless it was actually for the good of that person. So, with that understanding that Krishna is not simply a whimsical tyrant that we have to worship because he can blow us away in a second, and he's so powerful, we should have the faith that Krishna, as he tries to assure us, as he does assure us in the Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna actually cares about us. He says that one achieves peace by understanding Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam, Bhoktaram Yagyata Prasang Sarva Loka Maheswaram, Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam, Gyatva Mang Shanti Mrichati. So, for example, you're in anxiety about what's my duty, what should I do? And Krishna says you will achieve peace, first of all, when you understand that Krishna loves you. That Krishna's Suhrit literally means good heart. Hrit is obviously the English word heart. And Su, good, we also have in English, although through Greek it turned into you. Anyway, we won't go into all the phonetic history. As in, for example, euphemism or eugenics, which means good breeding. So you in English also means, and euphony, good sound. So the EU, which is the Greek version, comes from the Sanskrit SU, which means good. So suhrit literally means having a good heart towards someone, which Prabhupada often translates it well-wisher, literally having a good heart. So if we are in anxiety, it's because we've forgotten that there is someone who's all-powerful, all-knowing, who actually has a good heart toward us. And therefore, if we're unhappy, there's a tendency, there's sort of like sometimes an automatic reaction, which is a trap. It's Maya's trap. And that is when we're unhappy, we think, how can I be happy? Right? That's like the normal response. I'm unhappy, how can I be happy? If you think that way, you fell into Maya's trap. What we should really be thinking is, I'm unhappy, I must not be pleasing Krishna. Therefore, how can I make Krishna happy? Remembering that we are the hand feeding the food to the stomach, or watering the root of the tree, all those great examples. So really, the spiritual practice means getting past that strong but illusory tendency to think, I'm unhappy, how can I be happy? Rather, I'm unhappy, how can I please Krishna? And so if one is not feeling satisfied, that means Krishna is trying to get your attention. Something is not kosher. If Krishna is trying to get your attention, then we have to approach Krishna. If you ask the wrong question, you'll never get the right answer. And so the right question when we approach Krishna is, how can I best please you? How can I best please your pure devotee, Prabhupada? That's the right question. And if you're asking some other question, you're not really going to fix it. And if we come to Krishna and we say, I'll do anything for you on this list. So please read it carefully and indicate by raising your hand you've understood what I said there. Like, okay, Krishna, I'll do any of these 3 or 4 things, but it's your choice. When we approach Krishna and say, how can I best serve you? And you're not afraid of the answer, then you can really start to make progress. Yes?
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit something about the relationship between Madhu Radharani and Lord Nityananda?
Very little.
Hey.
Whatever Prabhupada says about it, whatever Shastra says about it, that's what I know. Obviously, Nityananda is a great worshipper of Radha and Krishna, and I mean, actually, Nityananda is an expansion of Krishna. We are actually monotheists, and so ultimately, Nityananda, of course, Krishna expands or Chaitanya is Krishna. And then just as Krishna expands with Balaram, Chaitanya expands with Nityananda, they each have their consorts, one being the expansion of the other. So yes.
This competing energy or competing analysis, thinking that we're all the oneness and the difference. How do we, to try to get more and more wisdom, we got to accept, okay, all the bodies we're all the family, at the same kind of difference, we have different grades of devotees, first class devotees, second class devotees. So how do we grab that in our brain to actually be a functional devotee? And if we're not kind of shifting all over the place.
Yes. First of all, there are some people that really, they're just not team players. I remember Peter Burwash, my old friend Peter Burwash, in one of his books. First, he's talking about how to get along with everyone, and the first point he made on page 1, there's some people you cannot get along with, so don't waste your time. So it's not about some Pollyanna conception. But if I'm in a position of leadership somehow, for example, as a sannyasi or guru or whatever, if I really think that I'm better than other people, I'm really not qualified. The qualification to be a leader is that you don't think you're better than other people. And so, of course, I may have certain duties. Based on the service Krishna has given me, I have certain duties to perform, so I have to do them. As I said, there are natural hierarchies, but as Krishna explains in knowledge and goodness, even though we respect those hierarchies, we do our respective duties, we know that that's the surface, that's just on the outside, that the essence of it is that we're all equal, that we're all souls. And in fact, someone takes the position of guru or a leader in a religious institution, not to lord it over people, not to keep them in a perpetual state of infancy or infantile mind, like, yeah, I know you're 4 years old, but you're still not ready to think. It's, obviously, how should I put it? The goal of acting as a leader, acting as a guru, is to bring someone to this understanding of oneness, of equality. And therefore Krishna says, Pandita Samadarshana. So if someone is attached to being in a higher position, or if someone believes that, yes, really, ultimately, I am better than this other person, that person is disqualified as a spiritual leader. And therefore, someone in a higher position in a spiritual society is performing their duties as a leader, but in their heart is really seeing the people that he or she is leading, seeing those people as equal to oneself. It's, for example, let's say in a family, say the husband and wife is sick, and so the other spouse has to take care of that person. You don't think you're better than the other person. It's like, okay, great, my wife is, someone thinks, okay, my wife is sick, or my husband is sick, so I'm taking care of them, so now I'm better than them, I'm greater than them. Because they're sick and I'm healthy, I'm taking, no, that's ridiculous. Or parents with children. When parents, good parents, sane parents, they love their children, and in the mind and heart of good parents, their children are more important than them, isn't it? I mean, good parents will do anything, including giving their life for their children. And so, the parents are obviously in a higher position in the sense that they have to take care of, but they don't think they're better, they think the children are more important. So, that's the qualification to be a spiritual leader. And if someone is attached to being a leader, and wants to, almost like that famous example of Lord Indra, becoming nervous or unhappy if someone is rising. As a leader, the greatest possible thing I can see in the people I lead is that they want to be leaders. Or they're growing, they're becoming autonomous. That's not a threat. It's not threatening to me that someone who's under me is becoming autonomous. It's the best possible news. Because there's no other reason to be a leader than to try to lift someone else up and make them powerful and autonomous. There's no other reason to be in charge of someone else. So, if we are looking for followers, we're unqualified. A real leader is looking for leaders and creating leaders. So, I don't know if I answered your question or not, but I got to say something that I want to say. That's the important thing.
The conflict sometimes we have in our society is that we need institutionally, there's a need for subordination. How does that figure in?
If someone is actually qualified to be a leader, then I think it's violence against that person not to make them leaders. If the person is qualified, that leader will find more people. And so, because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, not everyone is a leader. I mean, some people think that if we give, too much responsibility to women, ISKCON will be overrun by an Amazon Vaishnavi army that will just, men will all be, their throats slit in their sleep or something. So, if Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that our duty is born of our nature. He says it over and over again. In fact, in chapter 18, when Krishna is talking about the varnas, just defining the different varnas, he says over and over that these duties are born of one's nature. It's not the perverse idea that if that's your duty, you have to make your nature fitted. We need you to do this, so for the next 2 years, that has to be your nature. That is a complete perversion of what Krishna says. Krishna says that our duty is born of our nature. And he also says twice that if you don't do the duty born of your nature, you are in serious danger. Krishna also says in verse, it's not that if someone is surrendered, they don't have a nature. That's another absurdity. Krishna says in 3:33, in the Bhagavad Gita, Sadrasham cheshtate swasya prakritir jnanavanapi. That even a jnanavan, one who has knowledge, this is jnanavan, this is the word Krishna uses at 7:19. Jnanavan mam prapadyate vasudeva sarvam. So the word jnanavan in the Gita is like a jumbo word. It means that you've actually understood that Krishna is everything. And Krishna says even a jnanavan acts according to their own nature. So again, it's not that surrendered souls don't have a nature. They do. To be a surrendered soul means Atmani Vedana. You give yourself to Krishna. You don't give somebody else. And to give yourself to Krishna means to serve Krishna according to your nature. And as Oscar Wilde said, just be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. So a surrendered soul still has a nature. It's not that for example, one of Krishna's coward boyfriends, hey, we need a gobi down there in District 12. And, yeah, but I'm a coward boy. Prabhu, we need a gobi. It doesn't work that way. So, and Krishna says that if you don't act according to your nature, you are in serious danger. That means if a man or a woman is actually qualified to do a certain service, and we hypocritically deny them that service because of their body type, we are, in the name of protecting that person, we're actually putting that person in danger. Because we are not allowing that person to engage their real nature in Krishna's service. And so this endangerment of devotees, sometimes women, in the name of protecting them, is an unfortunate confusion. So we have to actually understand Bhagavad Gita. We have to actually read it and know what Krishna is saying. Not just a few, special verses we quote. We actually have to know what the Bhagavad Gita says. Yes, Nitya, always arisen.
We've seen sometimes people come to the movement that have already natural talent into the nature. And we sometimes engage them in that nature immediately, and they don't seem to pick up really what Krishna consciousness is about. So, they don't really surrender, they don't not really train or whatever, they're just engaging in their natural expertise. So that's also a problem.
I would say I see even more cases where someone approaches a movement, is not allowed to serve according to their nature, and goes away. I suspect that's actually more common. If someone comes to Krishna, let's say they're a musician, or a scholar, or a plumber, whatever, and we say, okay, you can do this for Krishna. I don't know. I suppose there could be cases where someone really needs is to be kind of pushed around a bit. And it's like in the army, we just like learn discipline itself, learn submission itself. It's not about what you want. I suppose in certain cases that might be medicinal for certain people. But I would tend to trust more Krishna's instructions. Obviously, serving according to your nature, you can cross a line and become self-indulgence. Like, hey, there's a house burning down, help us. Sorry, it's not my nature to be a fireman. Obviously, something can be carried to absurd extremes. And also, whatever one's nature is, you have to chip in. Just like, let's say, some guy may be a lawyer, but if there's a family event, he's got to help get the house ready, maybe help, cook something for the family dinner and everything. So everyone has to chip in. There's a difference between saying, okay, everybody cooperate, there are certain community activities in which everyone should participate, everyone should help. That's perfectly natural. And, someone shouldn't be a foolish prima donna and not help. At the same time, there's a difference between, actually, they even have words in Sanskrit, naimitika and nitya. There are certain duties, your career. You have to have a career according to your nature. And actually, without a career, that's what varna really means. It just means your career, your profession. And so, varnashrama charvatha purushena paramah. You can only worship Vishnu if you actually accept a serious career in life. So that's one thing. Another thing is that everyone, no matter what their career in nature, should be cooperative, help out the community, and it's just natural. Like I'd say at church, someone may be an architect, a psychiatrist, a lawyer, a carpenter, but if they're having, let's say, some kind of church event or community event, everyone helps. And we find that even in the Rajasuya sacrifice, where different great personalities, kings, but accepted just simple services like a treasure or taking tickets at the entrance or different people, because everyone cooperates. So everyone should be cooperative. Everyone should have the community spirit. Everyone should help out. But at the same time, our central career must be based on our nature.
Right.
Yes, back there. Are some people still teaching that? Oh my God, I thought. Well, I guess we know now that among the members of ISKCON is Fred Flintstone. The first letter I wrote to Prabhupada a few days after I joined the movement, I asked Prabhupada, should I just go on Sankirtan or should I stay in school as a student? Prabhupada wrote back and said, stay in school. I want you to be nicely educated so you can preach to other educated people. Prabhupada didn't say, you don't need to be educated to preach to other educated people. He didn't say that. He said, you do need to be educated to preach to educated people. When Prabhupada, for example, Prabhupada was really excited when Thodam Singh joined the movement. He later became Sri Damodar. And I used to always see Prabhupada in LA. We'd go for morning walks, one day Venice Beach, one day Rancho Park. And I remember when Sri Damodar, he wasn't even initiated yet. He was a student, and so he came from Manipur, so it was very easy for him just to adopt the brahmacharya principles. You're probably already following them. And Prabhupada was so excited that he was a PhD student. He didn't have his degree yet. So I wish we could just kind of clear out all this mythology and all this silliness and just become rational human beings. Prabhupada was so excited. If you look up in database, Prabhupada's letters written about that period in the mid-70s, he talks a lot about it. He's so happy that someone came to be his disciple, and that person was a student in the process of getting his PhD. I remember Ravindra Sarup, my godbrother, told me that when he joined the movement, he was getting his PhD in religious studies at Temple University. He wrote to Prabhupada, same question I asked Prabhupada, and Prabhupada gave the same answer. Yes, get your PhD, it's in religious studies, of course. So when Ravindra showed the letter to the devotees, the leaders of the temple said, it's obvious Prabhupada wants you to drop out of school. He said, yeah, but the letter says... Oh, that's it. Prabhupada knows that you're attached. That's why he's telling you he's indulgent. You know, it's very interesting. The people who believe they are the great defenders of Prabhupada often do things which we can't really find in Prabhupada's teachings. So, Prabhupada says in his purport in 1st Canto, 5th, Chapter 5, actually I can find it for you. Actually, I've got it. Okay. I got the smoking astra. Let's see if they have a verse. Come on, BBT. There it is. Let's see. Okay, 522. The lucky number is 522. I'll read you from Prabhupada's purport, where he completely rejects that rather silly idea. Okay, the verse is Idangi Pungsas Tapasakshutasiva, etc. Learned circles have positively concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, austerity, studying the Vedas, etc., culminates in the transcendental descriptions of the Lord. So Prabhupada says in his purport, when advancement of knowledge is applied in the service of the Lord, the whole process becomes absolute. The whole process includes student life. If that's your nature, you don't have to go to college for no good reason, but if it's your nature and you can do some service. So Prabhupada said the whole process becomes absolute. All the sages and devotees of the Lord, have recommended that art, science, philosophy, physics, chemistry, psychology, and all other branches of knowledge should be wholly and solely applied in the Lord's service. Art, literature, poetry, painting, etc. may be used in glorifying the Lord. So let's keep all of Prabhupada in the center. Actually, I was thinking of another example, it just slipped my mind now. My godbrother Lochan, who made the beautiful Prabhupada Murti. Many, many years ago, he was president of ISKCON Berkeley, and Prabhupada said to him, wrote him a letter, it's in Veda days, Prabhupada wrote him a letter and said, now that you are president of Berkeley, which Prabhupada knew was one of the great academic centers, I won't say intellectual because academics aren't very intellectual these days, but he said it's one of the great intellectual centers at that time. Therefore, he said, you have to show through Krishna consciousness that our philosophy, is beyond Marx or Kant or Plato. Now, did Prabhupada have any reason whatsoever to believe that Lochan had previously studied Western philosophy? No, he did not. And in fact, Lochan had never studied Western philosophy. And Prabhupada didn't say, well, since you have a degree in Western philosophy, no. He said you should learn these things and present them. Why did Prabhupada himself take the trouble to have his disciples come and dialogue with him about Western philosophers? Obviously, the purpose was to educate Prabhupada's disciples in the Western philosophical tradition so that they could preach. But what other reason could there be? When Prabhupada was speaking to the scientists about life comes from life, I was present there for many of those conversations, and Prabhupada was instructing them, to find out what the other side thinks. How can you, this idea that you turn off your brain when you walk in the door of the Hare Krishna movement it's just an ignorant and disastrous mistake. Obviously you can go to the other extreme. Obviously you can get attached to material learning. You can speculate in a way that can start to weaken your faith in what is actually the truth. Obviously, on any road you can go off on both sides. But the idea that a Vaishnava doesn't think, a Vaishnava is not a lifelong learner, a Vaishnava is not constantly acquiring new information to sharpen his or her preaching, to remain relevant on, it amazes me that someone could think that way. So again, you can go too far. You can take nice prasadam and you can literally eat yourself to death, as frankly a number of people have done. So too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And like everything else, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yukta Hara Viharasya, one should be moderate in eating and recreation. Recreation, by the way, doesn't mean you go out and break your leg playing soccer, which seems to be, at one point was a very popular thing to do among devotees in ISKCON. But recreation, you need to relax. You need to relax for your own health. It's like a computer. If you never put it to sleep, if you never turn it off, you're going to blow its brains out. We have nervous systems, and you can blow them out. And so, you have to relax. You have to rest. There should be a little reaction. You're actually, it's bona fide to laugh sometimes. So how can I remain relevant as a preacher? I just gave a class the other day, and there was some gentleman here who was visiting New Vrindaban, who was a professor at a prestigious university. And he came up to me and said he was really happy with the presentation, very, very happy, him and his wife. He said, especially because you know what's going on. You know what's going on. Prabhupada published Back to Godhead. If you look at Prabhupada's Back to Godhead, it was basically a spiritual political commentary. It's obvious that Prabhupada was up on the news. Now, if Prabhupada himself didn't want to learn anything new, how did he know what was going on politically? And therefore, Prabhupada chose to publish a relevant, up-to-date Back to Godhead. So the idea, if you don't learn anything else, it's astonishing that someone could think that would be a satisfying human life, where you stop learning, you stop inquiring, you kill your curiosity. You don't need to know anything else. Actually, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita Maeva mana adhatsva, maibudhi niveshaya. Fix your mind in me alone and dedicate your intelligence to me. Krishna calls this Buddhi Yoga. Anyway, I've made the point, I think, enough. But I think that's exactly what we do need. I mean, we should be faithful to Prabhupada's teachings. We should be faithful to Prabhupada's teachings. At the same time, this is meant to be an intelligent movement. Maybe that attitude that you described could be one of the big reasons why we have so few schools in our society. You know, for every school we open, we build 100 big temples with elaborate rituals. Even though Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Shreyam Dravyamayat Gyat Jnana Jagya Parantapa. It is better than offering me paraphernalia, as in puja. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't offer that. I'm not anti-puja. But Krishna says, better than offering me that, offer me education, knowledge. So you think we might have 100 schools for every elaborate... No, it's the opposite. Very few schools. Most ISKCON children don't receive a spiritual education, don't study anything, don't learn anything. And we're the new Brahmin class.
Where's that verse located? You know?
That,
Where's that verse located?
Shreyan, look it up in the verse index. First word is Shreyan. I think chapter 3 or chapter 2. Anyway, so we're the Brahmin class. Lord Chaitanya personally set the example of being learned. The Goswamis were all highly learned. I'm not saying everyone has to give up their service and go to college. I'm not saying you should, study yourself into confusion and doubt. I mean, if I say eat healthy prasadam, I don't mean, pig out and just, kill yourself eating. Everything has to be done in moderation. Everything has to be done in the right way. But we are supposed to be the new Brahmin class. So, thank you all very much. Yes, last point, Brahmatirtha.
Just paid commercial announcement.
Yes.
I mentioned that I recently published a Gita that should be many Gitas. The first one is a literal translation with the first systematic theology. And so I suppose you should be it. You have some now.
Nanda Leela? Did you read any books? Nanda Leela here. Raise your hand, Nanda Leela. Smile.
Oh, there.
Yeah, she has books. Prabhupada wrote me a letter once and said, read my book and then explain them in your own words. So for the Western audiences, I did a very, very literal translation of the Gita. So if you read the verse, you know exactly what the Sanskrit is. And also, there's actually a 150-page systematic philosophical explanation entirely based on the literal meaning of the Sanskrit words of the Gita. So there's I learned a lot in doing this, and I think everyone, if you read it, you'll actually learn a lot. There's all kinds of amazing things from the Gita that we didn't really know. And it's cheap. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.